Truistery Vibes warmly welcomes all our beloved listeners. We're so glad to see you again in our familiar time slot.
Today,
Truistery Vibes brings you a brand new story, one that we hope will touch your heart and stay with you. As you listen, feel free to leave a comment sharing the quote or moment that left the deepest impression on you. Wishing you a wonderful and meaningful listening experience. Aurelia Thorn perched on a high stool behind the gleaming counter of Moonlit crust, her fingers dusted with flour as she carefully arranged a fresh tray of lavender honey scones.
outside.
The dusk sky over Lake Starhaven melted from rose to indigo, and street lamps along Willow Avenue flickered to life. In Riverwood, a tucked-away town just north of Chicago, every corner exhaled a comforting hush, as if the surrounding pines themselves leaned in to listen. Aurelia, now 58, had weathered more than most. Widowed 5 years earlier when her husband, Aurelia Thorn, passed suddenly. She'd inherited not only a beloved bakery, but 2 daughters with hearts as different as moonlight and shadow. The shop, Moonlit Crust, was her lifeline. Its warm ovens and the gentle hum of mixers offered a refuge from grief. Each morning before sunrise, she stoked the wood-fired oven, admitted the sleepy town's first customers, and surveyed her small but devoted team. Into this world strode Marlowe Finch, Aurelia's eldest. At 29, a poised figure in tailored coats and silk scarves. Fresh from earning her master's degree in marketing from Northwestern University, Marlowe had spent the past year sketching out the launch of Finch & Company, her own boutique agency in nearby Evergrove. Yet tonight, her eyes betrayed the subtle tension of a perfectionist. She'd paused at the bakery door, taking in the scent of warm dough and vanilla bean. For Marlowe, Moonlit Crust symbolized both home and the bittersweet reminder of postponed dreams. Her agency was still an incubator project, and her savings, she thought, could have jump-started that next big campaign. Behind the counter, wiping her hands on a floral apron, was Zeph Finch, 26 and Aurelia's youngest. Zeph's auburn hair spilled in loose waves down her back, flecked with silver at the temples despite her youth. She'd left college halfway through to tend to Riverwood Textiles, her grandmother's old sewing studio revamped into Wind Whisper Atelier, where she handcrafted bespoke jackets and heirloom quilts for boutique shops in the Midwest. Zeph moved with a dancer's grace, humming an improvised melody while she slid each scone under a glass cloche. Her laughter was rare, but genuine, and it filled the bakery with surprising warmth. Tonight, as the clock struck 6, the front bell tinkled to announce Marlowe's entrance. Zeph straightened instantly, her smile bright but careful. Across the parquet floor, their eyes met. 2 sisters who shared a mother, but not a single trace of their father's blood. Their bond, forged through childhood adventures beneath star-spangled skies, was beautiful yet fragile, shaped by unspoken truths that lay hidden beneath the memory of Aurelia Thorn. All at once, the door opened again, admitting a burst of cool air. Marlowe crossed the threshold and said, "Hey, Mom." Zeph. Her voice was polite, but tinged with something unreadable, a longing or a reproach. Aurelia glanced up. "Welcome home, darling," she said, her smile warm but weary. "Fresh scones, if you're hungry." Marlowe nodded, her heels clicking against the wood as she approached the counter. She inhaled deeply and said, "Everything smells perfect." Yet when she turned to Zeph, her brow creased ever so slightly. Zeph cocked her head. "Tough day?" she asked softly. The question hung in the lavender-scented air. Outside, Riverwood's sleepy main street prepared for an evening of soft lamplight and whispered greetings. A handful of locals, hunters in camo jackets, joggers in neon gear, paused by the window to nod at Aurelia's latest creation, moon-shaped loaves embossed with her signature swirling pattern. Behind them, Lake Starhaven's placid surface reflected the first stars of night, as if the universe itself watched over this small town's quiet rituals. Back inside, the clatter of plates and the hiss of the espresso machine provided a steady rhythm. Zeph poured 2 cups of Earl Grey tea for her mother and sister, her movements fluid and practiced. Rough week at Windwhisper. Marlowe probed, tracing the ornate blue pattern on her cup. Zeph's thumb brushed the silver bracelet on her wrist, the one gift she had kept from her grandmother's estate. Production went overtime, Zeph admitted with a shrug. But I've got it under control. Aurelia studied her daughters in that lamplit glow. Marlowe, wrapped in ambition and meticulous plans.
Zeph,
imbued with creative fire and a wild streak that refused to be tamed. Both so fiercely her own. Under the worn beams of moonlight crust, mother and daughters were bound by love, and by the unspoken question that hovered like the aroma of honey, who would bear the weight of Selim's legacy. As the three of them sat together, sipping tea and inhaling the warmth of butter and sugar, the hush in Riverwood deepened. The moon crept higher, gilding the rooftops silver. Soon, someone would stumble into the shop with a storm on their skirts. But for now, Moonlight Crust remained a sanctuary, where a mother's hands kneaded dough to hold her family together, and where two very different daughters braced for the changes that tomorrow might bring. The next morning dawned crisp and clear, the autumn air still tinged with the sweetness of last night's maple glaze. Inside Moonlight Crust, Aurelia Thorn was already at work before sunrise, her silhouette backlit by the soft glow of the wood-fired oven. Flour dust motes drifted through the pale light as she arranged today's special. Miniature pear and ginger galettes topped with a single, perfect jewel of crystallized ginger. By the time Zeph Finch arrived at 7:30 a.m., clutching her reusable espresso cup, the bakery was humming with quiet activity. The door's brass bell chimed as she entered, and she paused to savor the scent of warm pastry mixed with autumn spice. Across the counter, Aurelia looked up with a gentle smile. Zeph returned it, though her heart felt taut. Yesterday's tension with Marlowe still hovered in her chest like an unwelcome chill. "Morning, Mom," Zeph called softly. She slipped off her coat and draped it over the coat rack. "Anything I can help with?" "Just the usual," Aurelia replied, nodding toward the work table. "I need those galettes boxed and ready for our pop-up at Evergrove tonight." Zeph wiped her hands and moved to the table. Her movements were efficient, but her mind drifted. Last night's argument with Marlowe had been the worst in years. At 8 a.m., Marlowe strode in, wearing her standard uniform of pointed flats, dark skinny jeans, and a burgundy blazer. She paused at the threshold, breathing in. "Wow, these smell amazing," she said, her voice softer than the steely tone Zeph had grown used to. Zeph offered a small smile. "Thanks. I tweaked our old recipe, with a hint of ginger zest." Marlowe nodded appreciatively, then her gaze flicked to the leather pouch Zeph wore on her belt. The heirloom silver pouch Aurelia had entrusted to her the night before. Inside lay the pair of moonlight pearl studs, an iridescent treasure passed down from Aurelia's mother. Aurelia cleared her throat. "Marlowe, honey, I wanted you to have these," she said, holding out the pouch. "I know how much they mean to your grandma. I thought, with your big launch coming up, you might like to wear them at your agency's opening gala." For a moment, Marlowe's expression softened into relief. But then something lurked in her eyes. Surprise edged into disappointment. Disappointment into hurt. She glanced quickly at Zeph, whose heart fluttered. "Mom," Marlowe began, her voice trembling. She took the pouch in one hand, then let it drop back toward Aurelia, as though the weight of it burned her fingers. "You know how much I've dreamed of those earrings. I saved every tip I made here, so I could buy a set just like Grandma someday." Zeph's throat tightened. She'd known this gift would cut deep. Marlowe had wanted those earrings since she was a little girl who stacked penny candies to pay for her first pair of ballet slippers. Zeph hated that she was the unwitting cause of her sister's pain. Aurelia's face fell. "Oh, sweetheart, I thought you'd be happy." Marlowe inhaled sharply, her lashes shimmering with unshed tears. "I am happy for you, Zeph. I am. I wish I'd gotten the chance before. It feels like you're always first in line for everything." She looked at Zeph directly for the first time, her voice firm. "Especially after you dropped out of college and took Windwhisper full-time. All I did was go to school. And for what?" Zeph set down her rolling pin, her hands trembling. Marlowe, it's not like that. You don't know how hard I worked to get Wind Whisper off the ground. Don't, Marlowe interjected, stepping back so sharply her heel nudged a fallen pastry. A puff of flour exploded around her. For a moment, Zeph stood frozen by the table, eyes wide in astonishment. Customers at the cafe window stole glances. The harmony of the bakery wavered. Aurelia hurried over, placing a calming hand on Marlowe's shoulder. Let's step outside, Aurelia coaxed, voice low. She steered her eldest daughter toward the front door, leaving Zeph alone in the pastry-scented hush. Outside on the stoop, Marlowe's composure cracked. Why, Mom? She demanded, her voice catching in her chest. Why does Zeph always get the heirlooms? The favors? Even when she left college, you supported her every step of the way. Aurelia's eyes glistened. Marlowe, please believe me, you're my first priority. Marlowe's lip quivered. Then why? Her breath caught, tears spilled. Why do I always feel second best? Aurelia's heart clenched. She had chosen the moment carefully. Marlowe's gala was in 2 weeks, an event that would define her burgeoning career. She thought the earrings would show her support. Instead, her gesture had unwittingly reopened a wound. Harper, Aurelia began, using Marlowe's given name, her former nickname. I gave the earrings to you because I wanted you to feel as beautiful as I always believed you are. I never meant to hurt you. Marlowe sniffled. I've been hurt before, Mom. I've watched Zeph get extra shifts to help me pay tuition, and then she spends her nights hand-stitching custom jackets while I burn through my savings on textbooks. She looked down at the cobblestones. I don't know how to forgive her or you. Aurelia wrapped an arm around her daughter, drawing her close. You both have earned everything you've gotten through hard work. I should have talked to you first, really talked before giving them away. Inside, Zeph watched through the window as her sister and mother embraced on the stoop. Her heart ached with guilt. She turned away, cleaned up the fallen pastry, and boxed the remaining galettes in silence. Marlowe and Aurelia re-entered. Marlowe's cheeks were stained with tears, but her chin was lifted. She crossed to the counter, her once steely glance now tempered by vulnerability.
Max, I'm sorry.
She used the old childhood nickname. Marlowe rarely did that. Zeph paused, surprised. Marlowe took a breath. I'm sorry for shooting first. I know you didn't ask for those earrings. I know it wasn't personal. I'm proud of what you've built. She turned to their mother. Mom, thank you for thinking of me. I'd love to wear them at the gala, if Zeph wouldn't mind. Zeph's throat constricted. She set down the pastry box and reached for Marlowe's hand. Of course I don't mind, she whispered. They're Grandma's earrings, they belong to our family. Marlowe's blue-gray eyes softened as she squeezed Zeph's hand. Aurelia wiped a tear from her own cheek and guided them both behind the counter to a small, locked cabinet. She opened it and removed the silver pouch. Handing it first to Marlowe, she said, You wear them first at the gala. Then, when Zeph's first pop-up cafe opens, they're hers. The sisters exchanged a shy smile. In that moment, the pastry-strewn work table, once an arena of conflict, became their altar of reconciliation. As the bakery's bell tinkled anew with the arrival of the morning's first real customers, Aurelia straightened her shoulders and announced in a clear voice, Welcome. Can I get anyone a fresh lavender honey scone? Marlowe and Zeph stood side by side, united once more, ready to face the day together. Two very different women bound by love, shared history, and the unbreakable thread of family. The soft chime of the doorbell at Moonlit Crust always felt like a promise, until the morning it rang with foreboding urgency. Marlowe Finch carried a latte in one hand and her tablet in the other, ready to tackle weekend client pitches at Finch and Company. Yet as she crossed the sunlit floor of the bakery, her breath caught. Zeph Finch hovered behind the counter, the delicate steam of Earl Grey curling around her face. Aurelia Thorn stood by the display case, her expression unreadable. Harper, Aurelia said, using the full name she rarely uttered outside of serious moments, there's something I need to show you. Marlowe's grip tightened on her latte. The warmth seeped through the paper sleeve, as though trying to anchor her in place. "Okay," she replied, voice measured. "What's going on?" Aurelia led them around the back of the bakery to a narrow staircase hidden behind a heavy curtain. Its wood steps were worn smooth, and a single brass sconce cast a dim glow against a wall lined with old photographs. At the top, she paused before a battered chest. The kind you might find at the end of a sea captain's tale, stitched leather, tarnished brass hinges, and slats bowed by decades of secrets. Zeph swallowed. "Mom, are you sure?" Aurelia opened the chest with a soft creak. Inside lay yellowed letters tied in ribbon, a faded hand-stitched sampler emblazoned with the name, Thorn, and a small wooden box carved with an intricate moon motif, the same moon that graced every loaf at her bakery. Marlowe's eyes widened. "What is all this?" Aurelia retrieved a letter first. "It's paper brittle. This was Selim's, my husband's, handwriting." She handed it to Marlowe. The two sisters exchanged a nervous glance before Harper carefully untied the ribbon and unfolded the top sheet. "My dearest Aurelia, I write these words with trembling hope that someday you will understand why I brought Zephyrine into our lives." Marlowe's heart pounded. "This says he wrote this to you?" Aurelia nodded.
Yes.
"It explains why I adopted Zeph after that terrible accident on the Yuma Highway. Her birth mother, she couldn't care for her. Tears sprang to Zeph's eyes. "Mom, you never told me any of this." Aurelia's voice wavered. "I thought it best to protect you both. But I see now that hiding the truth only bred more hurt." Marlowe set the letter down and pulled out a photograph from the chest's floorboards, a young Selim, sun-browned and smiling, cradling a toddler with wind-tousled hair. Next to them, a woman in a dusty turquoise dress. None of it fit the tidy narrative Marlowe had grown up believing. "Where was this taken?" Marlowe asked softly. Aurelia inhaled. "Arizona, near the Painted Desert. That woman," she pointed at the photograph, "was Selim's secret love before we met. Her name was Sierra." Zeph's hand flew to her mouth. "Sierra, as in wind? Like Zephyrine?" Aurelia closed her eyes. "He named you after her, to honor Sierra's memory and the child he couldn't save." She touched the photo tenderly. "He never intended to hurt either of you. But fate conspired. Sierra, she died in that car crash. Only you survived." Silence fell, broken only by a distant whir of the espresso grinder. In that hushed attic, the three of them felt an invisible barrier shift. Years of unspoken resentment, of Marlowe's jealousy, of Zeph's quiet defiance, all began to unravel. Marlowe set the photo down and reached for a second letter, this one penned by Sierra's sister, found tucked beneath the sampler. "To whoever reads this, I forgive Selim. I ask only that he love my niece as I would have." Zeph's breath caught. He told you about me?" Aurelia nodded, tears in her eyes.
He did.
"He begged me to keep you safe. I promised Sierra I would." Marlowe stepped back, wrestling with a storm of emotions. "So, you lied to me all these years?" Her voice shook, but she pressed on. "You let me think we were the whole story." Aurelia offered a trembling smile. "I thought I was protecting you, darling. But I see now. I was protecting my own guilt." Zeph closed the chest and moved forward. "Harper," she said, voice low. "I know it's hard. But I'm still your sister, adopted or not. I've spent my life trying to earn my place, and I always will." Marlowe's eyes filled. She looked at the once forbidden letters and photos scattered before her, then at her younger sister, the woman she'd teased and resented for so long.
I'm sorry,"
she whispered, stepping forward to embrace Zeph. Aurelia watched as her daughters wept into each other's shoulders, forgiveness flowing between them like warm honey. She placed a hand on the lid of the chest, closing it slowly. The latch clicked shut, but the barrier that had kept this family divided was gone forever. They descended the attic stairs together, shoulders touching. Back on the bakery floor, the crispy scent of galettes mingled with the sweetness of revelation. A customer at a corner table looked up expectantly, but Zeph and Marlowe barely noticed. Their world had shifted. Aurelia took her daughters to a quiet corner. "I have one more thing," she said, producing the small moon-carved box. Inside lay a locket, an intertwined T and S, Thorn and Sierra. Selim's final gift. Marlowe opened it slowly. Inside was a single moonstone, catching the light with a soft glow. She pressed the locket to her heart. "I'll wear it," she said. "For him, for Sierra, and for us." Zeph accepted the other half of the pendant, an S and Z entwined. "And I'll wear mine," she added. "For my mother, for Sierra, and for my sister." Aurelia's eyes glistened as she watched them come together. "From now on," she said softly, "this family is whole, with no secrets left to keep." The three of them returned to the front counter, different now, yet closer than ever. The morning light washed over Moonlit crust as if to bless this newfound unity. And outside, Riverwood awoke to another ordinary day, its tranquil streets unaware that in one little bakery, a family had reclaimed its true story, and with it, the promise of an unbreakable bond. Zeph Finch had always believed in the power of creation. From her earliest memories, streaks of sunlight dancing on a spinning sewing machine, the comforting scent of lavender sachets her grandmother tucked into every drawer, she sensed that beauty could be shaped by skill, patience, and a touch of boldness. Yet when she first entertained the idea of branching out from her acclaimed wind whisper atelier into the realm of hospitality, even her own heart fluttered in doubt. How could a weaver of fabrics become a master of flavors? And who would rave over pastries in between admiring bespoke jackets and heirloom quilts? On a brisk March morning, Zeph woke before sunrise and descended the narrow stairs of her apartment above the atelier. The early hush settled over Glass Spire Lane like a promise. Here was the quiet before possibilities stirred. She retrieved 4 jars of dried lavender, each bud she had handpicked from the community garden at Moonlit Crust, her mother's bakery across town. Next, she measured flour, sugar, and tangy lemon zest, working with the same meticulous attention she applied to every stitch. She folded crystallized ginger petals into the dough, envisioning each scone as a miniature jewel of flavor. Across the table lay her sketchbook, open to pencil renderings of her envisioned pop-up cafe layout, communal tables, soft ambient lighting, and shelves lined with her textile creations. By dawn, Zeph had kneaded dough, proofed batches, and arranged end tables within the atelier so that pastries and fabrics might share equal spotlight. She draped a linen banner above the front window, hand-lettered in swirling calligraphy. Wind Whisper Pop-Up Cafe, weekends 9 a.m. to 2 p.m., exhaling a nervous breath. She pressed the banner into place. The first light filtered through dusty panes, and Zeph's stomach fluttered. What if no one noticed? What if they walked right past her door, oblivious to the lavender glow within? Within moments, the scent of fresh butter and citrus drifted onto the street. A passerby paused, a university student clutching textbooks, then drifted inside. Curiosity piqued. Zeph watched from behind the counter as the young woman took a tentative bite of a scone and closed her eyes, a quiet escaping her lips. Emboldened, 2 artists from the gallery across the way stepped in, drawn by the promise of new flavors. By mid-morning, she had sold every scone, muffin, and croissant. Hands trembling, Zeph counted the modest profits, enough to cover rent, order new jars of lavender, and perhaps invest in an industrial mixer. The exhilaration that coursed through her felt akin to weaving an intricate quilt, every patch and seam falling perfectly into place. It was on her second weekend that Orion Vale entered her life. The glass doors chimed as he came in, dark denim and charcoal overcoat brushing the threshold. He wore a confident smile, his sapphire blue eyes scanning the display case. Zeph recognized him as a regular at Moonlit Crust. He often lingered over strawberry ginger turnovers and debated the merits of Earl Grey versus English breakfast. Today, however, he stood captivated by the array of her lavender lemon scones. "I'll have one of each," he said, leaning casually against the counter. His voice was rich, with a faint Midwest lilt that spoke of years spent by the lakeshore. Zeph blinked, startled. She wrapped his selections in delicate parchment and tied each bundle with twine. Ambitious choice. She managed, sliding a fourth scone atop the stack. Orion grinned. I have a big meeting at Glass Spire Bank this afternoon. If I survive that, I deserve a treat. He produced a wallet, but Zeph shook her head.
On the house, she said.
He raised an eyebrow in mock surprise. Is that your pop-up's special policy? It's my thank you policy, she replied, for supporting Wind Whisperer's first weekend. He accepted a scone, pressed it to his nose, then took a bite. His eyes closed, and for one blissful moment, Zeph forgot everything but the sight of pure enjoyment on his face. When he opened his eyes, he seemed more himself, more present. He pulled out his phone and scribbled his number on the back of a napkin.
Call me, he said.
I know a great spot by the river. Better than meeting on Glass Spire Lane. Zeph laughed, tucked the napkin into her apron, and watched him go. Her pulse lingered long after the door had closed behind him. Their first date unfolded a week later at Crystal Walk, the pedestrian bridge of suspended glass panes arching over a section of the Fox River. Zeph arrived under a sky dappled with lingering winter stars, clutching a thermos of spiced hot apple cider. Orion waited beneath an iron archway, the city lights reflecting off his glasses. In his outstretched hand was a small bouquet of daffodils, bright, hopeful harbingers of spring. Thought these might brighten the evening, he said. You're kind to carry flowers in March, Zeph replied, tucking a bloom behind her ear. They strolled side by side, each step stirring soft echoes on the glass floor. The river below shimmered like quicksilver, and kayakers drifted lazily, unaware of the magic above. Orion spoke of his childhood in Oakwood Heights, a lakeside town where his father taught physics and his mother painted sunsets for summer art fairs. Zeph shared memories of Riverwood, of afternoons helping her mother knead dough, and evenings threading needles in the lamplight. They discovered shared loves, folk music, botanical gardens, vintage typewriters, each revelation forging another link between them. At a widened overlook hung with suspended prisms, they paused. Light fractured through the glass, casting spectral rainbows at their feet. Orion offered his hand. Zeph placed hers in his, surprised at how naturally she fit. Incredible, he murmured, but not as incredible as this moment. Zeph smiled, her heart soaring. Thank you for bringing me here. He drew her close beneath the rainbow glow. I could stay in your arms forever, he whispered. They shared a gentle kiss, framed by dancing colors, as if the universe itself conspired to celebrate their union. In the weeks that followed, Zeph and Orion's routines meshed seamlessly. She began closing Wind Whisperer and Whisk, her newly christened café-atelier hybrid, at 8 p.m., then hurried to the bank branch's lobby where Orion worked late. There, amidst the hum of computers and the soft buzz of fluorescent lights, they shared late-night lattes and wrapped pastries in napkins. Zeph sketched new cafe layouts on crumpled paper. Orion offered precise margin calculations that could transform her pop-up into a permanent fixture. He introduced her to local lenders, guided her through business loan applications, and connected her with investors intrigued by her creative concept. One evening, Zeph sat alone at a small table, pen poised over her ledger, when Orion slipped into the booth across from her. He had in his hand a slender envelope. Zeph looked up. I spoke with 3 potential backers today, he said. They're impressed by your vision, but they need a formal proposal. She exhaled, closing her eyes. I don't know if I can do it. His eyes glowed with quiet confidence. You can, and I'll help. He slid the envelope across the table. Inside lay a meticulously prepared outline, projected cash flow, demographic research, marketing strategies. Start here, he said. Zeph's chest tightened. This was more than financial backing, it was belief. She reached across the table, and he clasped her hand. Together, he said, we'll build this, brick by brick. By midsummer, Wind Whisperer and Whisk had settled into its permanent location with a fresh lime green awning and chalkboard menus scrawled in Evelyn's flowing script. Customers, students, designers. Families out for a weekend stroll, lined up for scones, espresso, and the chance to browse Zeph's artisan textiles. Marlowe's agency had taken on the cafe's branding, her team designing glossy business cards, social media campaigns, and a sleek website. Aurelia flew in for the grand reopening, baking lilac-infused cupcakes and offering masterclasses in scone glazing. On reopening day, Zeph arrived early in a fitted denim apron embroidered with a silver quill. She hovered behind the counter, heart racing as she watched the lines stretch around the building. At precisely 10 a.m., Orion stepped in, carrying a small velvet box. Zeph felt her breath catch. He made his way through well-wishers, climbed onto a small stool, and caught her eye. She met him beside the handcrafted oak countertop as the last of the cupcakes sold. Murmuring apologies, he knelt on one knee, loosing a collective gasp from the crowd. "Zephyrin Finch," he said, "you've breathed life into every stitch, every pastry, every corner of my heart. Will you marry me?" Tears welled in Zeph's eyes. She glanced at her mother and sister, both nodding, hearts brimming with joy. She knelt beside him, wrapping her arms around his neck. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will." Orion slid a moonstone ring onto her finger, a single, luminous gem set in white gold. Applause and laughter erupted as the couple embraced, their wedding announcement rivaling any pastry launch. In that moment, Zeph realized that love and artistry had become inseparable. That evening, as the sun dipped below Glass Spire Lane, Zeph and Orion locked the cafe's doors and stepped into a soft dusk. Neon lights hummed overhead. The river murmured in the distance. They walked hand in hand toward Crystal Walk, retracing the path where their story had first deepened. Orion tucked his arm around Zeph's shoulders. She rested her head on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "I never dreamed it could be this perfect," she murmured. He kissed her temple. "The best is yet to come." Zeph closed her eyes, breathing in the cool night air and the promise of tomorrow. Challenges would arise, menu expansions, production deadlines, seasonal slowdowns. But she knew, in this shared creation of life and love, they had already crafted something extraordinary. And under the canopy of glass and stars, Zeph Finch and Orion Vale stepped forward into their next chapter, two creators bound by vision, devotion, and the sweet alchemy of lavender and lemon. A journey begun with flower and thread had flourished into a lifetime of shared dreams, and the road ahead glimmered with infinite possibility. The late summer sun poured through the lace curtains of Wind Whisper and Whisk's private back room as Zeph Finch sat cradling her swollen belly. The room was a quiet sanctuary draped in soft pastels and warmed by the scent of vanilla and cedar. Dozens of daffodils, an early gift from Orion, bloomed in mason jars along the windowsill. On a nearby table, a hand-stitched quilt bearing Zeph's signature, W, lay folded next to a small wicker bassinet lined with pale blue flannel. Zeph's breaths came in gentle waves as she rocked in the antique glider her mother, Aurelia Thorn, had restored with shimmering silver accents. Outside, the steady hum of cafe patrons and the distant chime of the glass door drifted through the walls, but in this moment, the world felt suspended. Her phone buzzed repeatedly with well wishes from friends, family, and local news outlets eager to cover both her cafe's grand reopening and the imminent arrival of her first child. Yet all she could focus on was the tiny life stirring within her. Orion Vale arrived at precisely 2:45 p.m., having dashed from the Glass Spire Bank after a whirlwind meeting. His dark wool coat was draped over his arm. In his hands he carried a carefully wrapped bundle of soft blankets and a simple silver rattle engraved with their baby's name, Lyra. The name had come to them the night they first watched the Riverwood fireworks burst over Lake Starhaven, brilliant sparks glinting against the dark sky. The ancient astronomer in Zeph's favorite novel had claimed Lyra was the harp of the gods, and so the name felt both celestial and entirely right. "Hey, beautiful," Orion said as he stepped inside, his eyes bright with excitement behind his glasses. He set down the gift and knelt beside Zeph, planting a soft kiss on her temple. Ready. Zeph nodded, pressing her palm to her lower abdomen. I think she's coming. They spoke in hushed tones as they gathered essentials, a hospital bag packed with Zeph's favorite herbal teas and soft cotton gowns, Orion's new leather-bound journal for recording first words, and a small framed photo of their wedding day, smiles radiant beneath the wind whisper and whisk sign. Aurelia stood nearby, eyes glistening with both pride and apprehension. You two are going to be amazing, she whispered, smoothing Zeph's auburn hair. Lyra is lucky to have you. In a flurry of gentle activity, they helped Zeph into the back seat of Orion's sedan and whisked away towards St. Aidan's Medical Center. The drive through Riverwood's tree-lined streets felt both familiar and surreal. Street lamps cast warm pools of light on the pavement as they sped past the bakery and Orion's bank, now closed for business. Zeph breathed steadily, counting the seconds between contractions. Orion kept one hand on the wheel and the other firmly clasping hers, offering quiet reassurances. You're doing great. Almost there. I'm right here. By 3:30 p.m. they had checked in, and a nurse guided them into a private birthing suite fragrant with citrus-scented candles. Soft instrumental music played, mingling with gentle beeping from monitors. Zeph gripped Orion's hand, tears shining in her eyes when the attending doctor greeted them. Aurelia stayed a respectful distance away, offering a comforting smile before ducking into the waiting area. The hours that followed were a whirlwind of rising and falling intensity. Zeph breathed through each wave of pain, grounding herself in Orion's steady gaze and their shared mantra, You are strong. You are ready. She felt his thumbs lightly massage her knuckles as the final phase of labor approached. The doctor and nurses moved with practiced kindness, guiding Zeph's breath and helping her find positions of comfort. And then, in a breathless moment that felt to both of them like a leap across time and space, a single, powerful push brought their daughter into the world. At 6:12 p.m., little Lyra Vale made her first cry. Her skin glowed with pink luminescence, and her tiny hands grasped the air with instinctive urgency. Zeph's tears fell freely as the nurse gently placed Lyra on her mother's chest. Orion stood by, awestruck, his hand covering his mouth in wonder. Lyra's wide eyes blinked up at them, curious and fierce, a perfect reflection of both parents. Zeph cradled Lyra close, feeling the silky weight of her newborn form and the delicate rhythm of her heartbeat. Welcome, my star harp, she whispered, brushing her daughter's soft cheek. Lyra's lips quivered in a tiny smile as if she recognized the warmth of her mother's voice. Orion bent close, pressing his lips to Lyra's tiny forehead. You are everything we dreamed of and more, he murmured. For the next hour, the world outside the birthing suite ceased to exist. Aurelia returned, her eyes red-rimmed, and draped her arms around Zeph, then Orion, then Lyra, weaving the new trio into an embrace that transcended words. Marlowe soon arrived, having left Finch and company in capable hands, and hovered at the threshold, unsure whether to laugh or cry. When she finally held her niece for the first time, Marlowe's expression softened into pure wonder. Hey there, little one. I'm your Aunt Marlowe. Lyra cooed, testing the world with a tiny squeal. That evening, as the city lights blinked on and the cafe's windows darkened in the distance, the family settled into the suite's plush chairs. Pad thai and chicken soup from a nearby cafe arrived on a silver tray, comfort food for the new mother. Between spoonfuls of broth, Zeph and Orion exchanged stories of furloughs impending, nursery plans awaiting, and hopes for Lyra's laughter echoing through Glass Spire Lane. Marlowe presented a tiny hand-painted onesie that read Future Weaver, and Aurelia revealed the miracle quilt she had finished earlier that day, stitched with delicate lunar motifs in shimmering thread. Lyra, now snug in her bassinet, blinked at the ceiling lights and tested her lungs with small hiccups of breath. Zeph leaned forward, gently wiping a trickle of milk from her daughter's lip. She's perfect, she said, voice thick with emotion. Orion nodded, brushing a lock of hair behind Zeph's ear. More perfect than I ever imagined. The hours passed in a haze of joy. Nurses came and went, checking vital signs, and offering congratulations. A soft lullaby drifted from the radio. Zeph closed her eyes for a few precious moments, letting exhaustion wash over her with the same peace she had felt weaving her first quilt. Before dawn broke, the family gathered for one last photo, Aurelia standing behind Marlowe and Zeph, who each cradled an armful of Lyra. Orion crouched beside them, his hand resting protectively on Zeph's shoulder. The snapshot captured the raw, unfiltered triumph of love and resilience, 5 faces illuminated by the gentle glow of a single bedside lamp, eyes shining with tears and smiles. As they packed to leave, Zeph tucked the silver rattle into her robe pocket, a small token of this monumental day. Orion slipped the hand-painted onesie into the car seat, and Marlowe carried the quilt with reverent care. Aurelia, though physically unsteady at times, insisted on walking out to the carport, her proud gaze lingering on the small bundle in the infant seat. Driving back to Riverwood, the late summer air was cool and fragrant. Lyra slept soundly, her tiny chest rising and falling in the crook of Orion's arm. Zeph reached across the front seat to hold Orion's hand, their fingers entwined. "She's our star," Zeph whispered. Orion nodded, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "Our harp of the heavens." In the quiet that followed, they let the peace of parenthood settle around them. The road home was no longer just a route between bakery and bank, it was a bridge into a new world, where every sunrise would be graced by Lyra's first coup, every evening brightened by her tiny fingers clutching a grandmother's quilt. And as the first rays of dawn gilded the fields outside Riverwood, Zeph and Orion crossed the threshold into their little home, 2 creators now joined by a third, most precious dream of all. A dream named Lyra. The first hint of trouble arrived on an ordinary Tuesday, when Zeph Finch returned home after closing Wind Whisper and Whisk and discovered an unopened box on her kitchen counter. The small, black velvet container bore no label, only a discreet emblem stamped in silver, a curved feather encircling a moon. Her pulse quickened as she lifted the lid, half expecting pastries, but found a delicate platinum necklace inset with a single moonstone instead. It was gorgeous, unmistakably a gift with deep significance, but it wasn't the quill-shaped keychain Orion had given her. Zeph frowned, heart fluttering uneasily. She recalled Orion's promise of a celebration, a private dinner for their first anniversary at Riverwood's lakeside pavilion. He'd hinted at something special. Could this be that? She slipped the necklace into the jewelry box by her dresser, forgetting it for the moment as she changed into pajamas. That night, Zeph and Orion shared takeout Thai food on the small balcony overlooking Glass Spire Lane. Twinkling cafe lights reflected off Orion's dark hair as he recounted the day's negotiations with a potential investor. Zeph listened, half distracted. Her mind kept drifting back to the moonstone necklace. "Something on your mind?" Orion asked, removing a stray noodle from his cheek. Zeph hesitated. "I found this earlier." She retrieved the jewelry box and opened it. Orion's eyes widened as he recognized the necklace. "Where did you get that?" he asked, voice tense. Zeph's brow furrowed. "It was sitting here when I got home. It's beautiful, but it's not what you promised." Orion's jaw tightened. He snatched the necklace, scanning its delicate chain. "This isn't mine," he said, placing it on the table. "I would never buy you something like this." Zeph felt the room spin. "But who did? Did Marlowe? Did she give it to you?" Orion's lips pressed into a thin line. "Marlowe? Why would she?" Zeph stood abruptly. "You spend so much time with her agency marketing our reopening. Marlowe's your sister-in-law, your partner's sister. Maybe she's—" "I can't believe you'd even think that," Orion interrupted, his voice rising. He stood, backing away. "Marlowe had nothing to do with this. You know I love you. Why would you doubt me?" The edge in his tone stung. Zeph's eyes glistened. "I'm sorry," she whispered, turning her back. "I shouldn't have. I just feel so overwhelmed these days." He crossed to her and touched her shoulder. Hey, it's okay." He paused, then added with a forced smile, "We'll figure this out." But the tension lingered as he left for the night. Zeph stared at the moonstone necklace under the balcony light until her eyelids grew heavy. The next morning, Marlowe Finch strode into Windwhisper and Whisk, her brow drawn tight with purpose. She greeted her sister with a half-smile. "Morning, Zeph. I need to talk about the website's landing page." Zeph forced a professional tone.
Sure.
"Let me grab my phone." As they reviewed mock-ups of the new homepage, Marlowe's phone buzzed with an alert, a tagged photo on social media from the cafe's reopening anniversary dinner. There, in the background, Zeph and Orion stood beneath strings of fairy lights. Around Zeph's neck gleamed the same moonstone necklace. Marlowe's breath caught. She recognized the emblem immediately. It was the signature logo of Vale and Company. Fine Jewelers, a prestigious Chicago boutique where Orion sometimes consulted. Her heart sank. Zeph had never shown her that necklace. She'd assumed it was an anniversary gift orchestrated by Orion behind their backs. Confusion and hurt flickered across her face. "Zeph," Marlowe said, standing abruptly. "That necklace on Instagram, where did you get it?" Zeph looked up, puzzled. "What necklace?" Marlowe, voice taut, showed her the tagged image on the phone. Zeph's stomach tightened when she saw the moonstone glowing around her throat. "Oh," Zeph said, blanching. I forgot about that." Marlowe's eyes narrowed. "Forgot?" Zeph set the phone aside. "Orion surprised me. It was meant for our anniversary. I didn't realize it would cause any confusion." Marlowe's jaw clenched. "Do you know what it looks like?" Vale and Company doesn't just sell moonstones. They handle platinum and diamonds, expensive things. "Zeph, are you accepting lavish gifts from your husband?" Zeph winced. "It's not like that. It's symbolic. For Lyra, so I could always feel connected to the cafe's Moonlight heritage." Marlowe shook her head, stepping back as though Zeph had betrayed her. "It's complicated, Zeph." They worked in tense silence until Marlowe uttered, "I need coffee." She left the cafe, without another word. That afternoon, Zeph sat alone behind the counter, folding linen napkins. The unresolved tension gnawed at her. She thought back to the necklace's arrival and realized she had never asked Orion about the boutique's emblem. She pulled out the piece and noticed a small tag tucked inside, a discreet engraving reading, OV 8.12, Orion's initials and the date. She exhaled. It was his personal touch. Still, their night of hushed arguments and Marlowe's icy glare left Zeph numb. She closed the cafe early, intending to call Orion and clear the air. But as she dialed, Marlowe's face flashed in her mind. She wondered if reconciliation could be so simple. That evening, Orion arrived with takeout dumplings and an apologetic smile, only to find Zeph retreating into herself. He placed the food gently on the counter. "Zeph, I'm sorry about last night, but I swear I had nothing to do with that necklace." Zeph unfolded his words the way she sank slices of pork and chard into soup. "Actually, it belonged to my grandmother," Orion said, watching her. "I consulted with Vale and Company, the store I work with, to have a moonstone replica made. I wanted something that would tie our worlds together, my family star harp tradition and your moonlight crust legacy." Zeph's shoulders slumped. "You didn't have to." "I did," he said gently. "Because I love you, and because I wanted Lyra to know her heritage too." She felt the sincerity in his voice cut through her doubts. But before she could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from Marlowe at 9:12 p.m. reading, "We need to talk." Zeph turned to Orion.
"I'm sorry."
"I have to go." On Glass Spire Lane, the cafe windows glowed behind her as she crossed the street toward Marlowe's sleek downtown office. Inside, her sister's agency was warm with desk lamps and city lights filtering through floor-to-ceiling glass. Marlowe sat behind a minimalist desk, arms folded. "Zeph," she said without preamble, "I want to apologize." Zeph exhaled. "Marlowe." "I shouldn't have lashed out," Marlowe continued. "I was halfway to believing God. It sounds stupid now, that Orion was trying to buy me off or take me out of Riverwood's picture." She stood and crossed to where Zeph stood by the window, overlooking the skyline. I was hurt about the earrings, and I took it out on you. Zeph's eyes stung. I'm sorry, too, for doubting you. I was blindsided by finding that necklace. I jumped to conclusions. Marlowe offered her hand. Can we start over? Zeph reached out and squeezed it.
Yes.
I've always seen you as my partner in crime. My sister, my friend. The tension melted as Marlowe pulled Zeph into a hug. I missed you. I missed you too, Zeph whispered. They pulled back and exchanged wry smiles. So, how about we call a truce? No more assumptions. Marlowe nodded, eyes bright.
Truce.
Now, let's get coffee and talk about your anniversary surprise. They laughed together, the sound echoing off the polished concrete floor of Finch and Company. Their laughter lingered as they walked out into the night, shoulder to shoulder beneath the city lights. The next morning, the cafe reopened as usual. Customers filtered in for warmth and pastries, greeting Zeph and Marlowe with cheerful nods. Behind the counter, the two sisters moved in tandem, Zeph handing out scones while Marlowe served lattes. Orion arrived to join them, his own tension eased. He brought a single daffodil for Lyra's jar and greeted Marlowe with a warm handshake that lingered in a hug for Zeph's sake. Aurelia watched from the doorway, her heart full as she saw her three favorite people standing together, united once more. She stepped forward, carrying a tray of honey sage biscuits. Morning, everyone, she said, beaming. I thought you could use fresh biscuit morale. As the family and sisters gathered around the counter, Zeph slipped the moonstone necklace over her head and adjusted its weight against her heart. She glanced at Marlowe, her confidant, and Orion, her partner, and knew that misunderstandings would come, but so would resolutions, each just as necessary to the strength of their bond. In that moment, the sun rose higher, flooding the cafe with golden light. Riverwood stirred to life outside, unaware of the quiet reconciliation that had sealed the hearts within Moonlight and Whisk. And for Zeph, every cookie glaze and fabric stitch that day bore a deeper joy, born of trust renewed and love affirmed, a joy she would carry with her, shining like the moonstone at her throat. Through every chapter yet to come, the first blush of dawn spilled across Riverwood as the sun inched its golden fingers over the horizon, painting Lake Starhaven in molten hues of amber and rose. Zeph Finch stepped onto the creaking porch of her home, a mug of spiced chai warming her hands, and inhaled the crisp morning air. 2 years had passed since she had first dared to mix fabrics and flour, and every breath felt like a celebration of how far she and Orion Vale had come. Behind her, the soft hum of wind chimes, gifts from loyal customers, tinkled in harmony with the awakening birdsong. Inside, Wind Whisper and Whisk stood bathed in the gentle light, the front windows revealing rows of rosewater macarons, matcha financiers, and miniature quiches all ready for the day's patrons. Above the counter, the sign she and Marlowe had designed together gleamed, Wind Whisper and Whisk, where creativity and comfort collide. Each letter had been hand-painted in metallic teal by Marlowe's agency, and Zeph found that shining nameplate as much a monument to their shared struggles as a beacon for customers. The kitchen door swung open and Orion entered, already in motion, tying his apron and greeting Zeph with a warm, "Good morning, my star harp." She laughed. He always called her that on days when she needed reminding of her own brilliance. He produced a steaming mug of espresso adorned with a lavender foam swirl, carefully balanced in his free hand. "Thought you could use this," he said, handing it to her. She accepted it with a grateful smile, lips brushing his in a quick, affectionate kiss. They moved as one into the bustling bakery. Zeph dipped into her apron pocket and produced 2 tiny aprons embroidered with their initials, Z and O, alongside a miniature quilt Aurelia had sent as a housewarming gift. Orion draped his around his waist, and Zeph tied hers with practiced ease. It was the final touch before they flipped the sign on their front door from closed to open. Within minutes, the first customers began to filter through the door, students clutching laptops, local artisans scouting for inspiration, families seeking early breakfast. Each greeted Zeph and Orion with bright nods and hopeful smiles. Zeph offered a tray of lemon lavender scones, still warm from the oven, and watched delight cross each face. Orion took orders with meticulous courtesy, his presence at the register a comforting constant. By mid-morning, lines formed outside, winding down the block. Pop-up events were scheduled in Evergrove. Collaborative workshops with Riverwood's art gallery were booked solid, and Marlowe's agency, now housed in a sleek corner office, had landed a major retainer to design the branding for a national organic tea company. The sisters embraced over the counter as Marlowe breezed in, radiant in a teal-sheath dress, her own apron folded over one arm. "Morning dream team," she declared. "I have an early strategy session with our new client. Congrats on the stellar launch, you two." Zeph nodded, pride blooming in her chest. "And congrats on the agency's new contract, Marlowe. You earned it." The three shared a silent high five. Behind them, Aurelia appeared in the doorway, carrying a wicker basket overflowing with homegrown lavender and chamomile. She set it down ceremoniously. "A little gift from me to you," she said, hugging each daughter in turn, "for all you've built together." In the midst of this joyful clamor, Orion caught Zeph's eye and wordlessly guided her toward a small side room adjacent to the main bakery floor. He closed the door behind them. The room was softly lit by a row of hanging Edison bulbs, casting a warm glow on the wall, where a custom mural, painted by Marlowe and Company, depicted a silvery harp floating among lavender sprigs beneath a crescent moon. Below it, a single word: thrive. Orion reached for her hand, his expression earnest. "Look at what we've made," he murmured. "When I first met you, I never imagined this." Zeph traced the mural with her fingertips, remembering the hesitations and heartaches that had preceded this triumph, doubts about opening a cafe, the discovery of her family's hidden past, the misunderstandings with Orion and Marlowe, and the birth of their daughter Lyra. Each obstacle had been a note in the melody that led them here. She turned to him, eyes shimmering. "We did it together," she said softly. "All of us, every step." He cupped her face. "And we'll keep doing it for Lyra, for our families, for every person who walks through that door needing a little warmth." They shared a kiss full of promise, then broke apart as the bakery's door chimed again. They returned hand in hand to the main floor, greeted by a chorus of good mornings and the scent of freshly ground coffee. That afternoon, Zeph slipped away to a corner of the cafe's mezzanine, where she found Lyra, now 18 months old, toddling among soft rugs and plush cushions in a carved wood playpen. Little Lyra's curls gleamed copper in the sunlight. She glanced up, spotted her mother, and rushed wobbling toward her, squealing. Zeph scooped her into her arms, planting kisses on her soft cheeks. "My little Lyra," she whispered. "Look at you, so brave, so beautiful." Lyra reached for the quilt draped nearby, Aurelia's handiwork stitched with lunar crescents, and peered at the silver rattle Orion had given her on her first night. She shook it experimentally, the delicate chime ringing softly. Zeph hummed a lullaby under her breath, weaving an unspoken story of hopes carried forward. Below in the bakery, patrons glanced up at the glass railings to admire the cozy nook their daughter played in. A couple sharing iced lattes waved from their seats. A local teacher said to her companion, "This place feels like home, especially seeing a child here. It warms my heart." As the sun sank lower, Orion joined them with 2 iced matcha lattes topped with lavender foam. He settled into a plush armchair and held Lyra's hand, helping her take tiny sips. Lyra's eyes widened at the cool sweetness, and she giggled in delight. Zeph sank beside them, cuddling against Orion's shoulder, their daughter cradled between them. It was in that ordinary moment, father, mother, child united in quiet contentment, that Zeph felt the fullest measure of joy. The countless hours of kneading dough and threading needles, the late-night business plans and soft arguments, the laughter, tears, and reconciliations all culminated in this tableau of domestic bliss. Evening approached with a soft swirl of pink clouds. Zeph rose and called out to Orion and Lyra that she'd replenish pastries and take inventory of fresh ingredients. She ducked behind the counter, leaving Orion to entertain Lyra with tickles and whispers. From across the room, Marlowe and Aurelia watched, sharing a satisfied smile over a pot of chamomile tea. Later, when the last customer drifted away and the bakery lights dimmed, the family gathered one final time. Aurelia held a professionally printed portfolio showing the bakery's journey, photographs of the first tiny pop-up, the Crystal Walk date, Lyra's newborn moments, and the grand reopening. Marlowe had designed the layouts and captions, titling it Moonlight Dreams Realized. Zeph wiped tears from her eyes as she flipped through each page, reliving milestones and memories that had shaped their lives. Orion placed an arm around each of them, wife, daughter, and business partner, and remarked, "Look at what we've become." His voice carried awe and gratitude. Zeph closed the portfolio and stood, taking a deep breath. The future beckoned with challenges, new menu items to test, and expansion into catering. Weekend workshops for quilting and baking, perhaps even a small boutique bakery in Evergrove's art district. But now, at this moment, she felt unshakable. She addressed her family. "I want us to take a moment to celebrate, not as business partners, but as a family. We've built something that sustains our community and each other. Whatever comes next, I know we'll face it together." Marlowe raised her teacup. "To family," she toasted. Aurelia lifted her mug of honey lemon tea. "To dreams we stitch and bake into reality." Orion tapped his latte glass. "To Lyra, our brightest star." Zeph smiled at her daughter, then clinked her cup with the others. "And to every new beginning that awaits." They drank and laughter rose, carrying them into the night. Outside, the sign Wind Whisper and Whisk glowed gently, a beacon of creativity and sanctuary on Glass Spire Lane. Beyond the windows, Riverwood settled into moonlit calm, embracing the promise of tomorrow. Inside, Zeph rested her head against Orion's shoulder. Lyra curled in her arms and marveled at the life they had woven together, threads of love, perseverance, and hope braided into something luminous. This was their bright new beginning, a tapestry still unfolding, woven by many hands but held together by unwavering faith in family. And with hearts intertwined, they stepped forward into the days ahead, ready to embrace whatever miracles the morning would bring. And that brings us to the end of today's story on Truistery Vibes. Don't forget to leave a comment with a quote or moment that touched you the most. Your words give our team the motivation to keep creating more heartfelt stories. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again soon.